Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I thought it'd be fun to do a card with some flowers, and this one is called Healing Hugs. So let's go ahead and get started. So the cards we're doing today comes from Stamping Up. I try to keep it simple. There's 2 stamp colors. This is the kit, and if you're interested in checking it out, my website is below. It's called Healing Hugs, and I love the flower in the leaves, so it's pretty cool. And these are rubber stamps, so if you haven't used them before, it gives you some instructions about how to adhere the sticker to them so you can place them on a stamping mount. So pretty easy. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and start on our first card. So I've already got it put in here. I'm going to do a peach background. I wanted to try this out. The flower's going to be using that purpley color, and the leaves obviously green. And so I thought I'd like to see how this looks on a colored card. So that'll be our first one. It's going to be a 1-layered card. And I start with the leaf first because I think it'll be easier to put the flower over the leaf and have it where the petals overlap the leaf. So if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I like to use a stamping tool. This one's my Misty, to ensure that if I need a second stamp, that it hits the same spot every time. And so that's what I'm using here. And I'm going to go ahead and use this green on the leaf and put that down and come back in and put the flower over it. So for the second and third card, I'm going to use white cardstock. It's Solar White cardstock, 80 pounds. And I'm going to do the same thing with the exception of I'm going to add embossing to 2 of the flowers and a set of the leaves. So you're going to see me do that here. The second card is not going to be embossed, but it'll be the same technique. I just didn't do the embossing part of it. So what I'm doing here is I laid down the ink and then I want to emboss it. And so you'll see me go back after I've stamped it with clear VersaMark, and I'm going to put that on there. And on top of it, I'm going to put clear embossing powder to give it this nice glossy look. You could also do this with glossy accents, but I really wanted to have a thin layer. Sometimes with glossy accents, the paper starts to curl and it becomes too much. So this just made it really, really easy. Again, on the second card, I don't do that, but the stamp is identical. So I'm just going to show this one here, and I'll go forward. You'll see me do this with the two flowers and the leaves. So I'm going to go ahead and go through this. I'll play some music and then we'll come back after and put the cards together. Did the stamping on the white cardstock, I purposefully did the leaves separate from the flower because I'm going to cut them out. In this, I'm going to show you how I used my ScanNcut. These cut perfectly with it. You could just use a pair of scissors and cut around, but one of the reasons I got the ScanNcut, and I'll include a link in the video at the end, but one of the reasons I did this is because I wanted to be able to cut images I stamp when I don't have a die. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to put them through, but again, you could easily cut them out with scissors if that's what you would like to do, or if you don't have one of these. So I'm just scanning them here. If you haven't used one of these before, it's pretty cool. Not all images come through as good. They really need to be solid images, work better to me, or something with a solid border and darker colors. So I'm just going through and it's scanned really good. I could see it, and now it's just going to go through and cut them out. And here's what they look like when they're cut out. The ones on the left, I did a cut very close to the border of the flower. The ones on the right, they're the embossed ones, but I also did a little edge around, so you've got this kind of nice white border around the leaves and the flowers. And you can see the gloss in the light there a little bit. You could choose not to emboss and just leave them both, without it. So I'm going to put together the first card. You remember it was on this peach color, and I'm using the Get Well Soon sentiment from the stamp kit. And then in the spirit of keeping this simple, I am just going to attach it to a white Neenah Solar 100-pound cardstock. And this card is complete. Again, I think if you don't have this color paper, that's fine too. Use anything that you have on hand. So card number 2, I decided to use a green cardstock. And I had this cardstock I had done with this stamp here. So it was a beautiful, it's called Rose Leaves. It's by Impression Obsession, and I'll include the link below. But basically, I just took some green ink. I laid the white cardstock over the stamp and just pressed into it. And it just created this beautiful background. So I thought I had been hanging on to this. Let's use it. So here I'm attaching the ones that do not have the embossing powder, and you can see the leaves are attached to the flowers here. I like to kind of do a quick layout of what the card will look like before I glue everything together. So that's what I was doing. And I like to offset the flowers or whatever the image is kind of over the edge. And so you'll see I cut that off. To give it a little bit of dimension, I decided to use some dimension dots to give it that extra layer. So the first card we did, you remember, was one layer. This one I'm trying to create a little bit of dimension in there with the flowers. And so that's what I'm using here. So the only thing this really needs now is a sediment, and I choose to use the Sending You Healing Vibes. I just put that on a white cardstock and I'm attaching it to the base there. And then this card is complete. So let's move into our final card here. I am going to use white cardstock and I'm going to wrap some washi tape around it. So just trying to create some uniqueness in the background. And then I had these cards I have used. If you haven't used this, it's called Metallic Gilding Polish. And I'll include the links below, but it's pretty cool. And you're going to see how I use that. So basically I take a white cardstock and I put this gilding polish over it. And the one that I'm using, the gilding polish that I've got here, it's got this iridescence look to it. So it's pretty cool and it's really easy to use. It's kind of a creamy, thicker texture, almost like a butter softened kind of, but not super soft. It's not gooey. It's got a little give to it. So basically I'm just going to put it on in a thin coat and you'll see the colors, and it comes in so many different colors. It comes in blues and purples and pinks and golds and silvers. So I just chose this color here, but the one that I wind up making the card with, it's already done and it's dry, and these actually do dry pretty quickly. So I think by the time I'm done making this card, that gilding polish had already dried. But the one I'm using is a little bit more of a pearl than it is the iridescence. So you'll see me do that, and then we'll get started building the rest of the card. So the layer that goes under this, I mentioned, has the washi tape over it. Literally, this is wide enough that I could just run it down the card, and I just trimmed it up. And so that's what I did here. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble this. I'm putting that piece, the first layer, on top of a cardstock, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm using glue here. I'm using the Neenah K glue to glue down the first layer, and then I went in with some dimensional dots, again just to give it some lift and dimension when creating this card. So that's what I'm doing here. So next I'm going to assemble the flowers and the leaves, and I use a little bit of glue when I'm putting the leaves on, as well as the dimensionals, so it gives it, you know, that feeling that it's sitting up from the card a little bit. So the last thing I do is I enter in the sediment, and the card is really almost done. What you won't see on the screen here, but you'll see in the final shot of its completion, is on the sediment, I add in some Nuvo dots just to give it a little bit of something extra in there, because it just seemed kind of boring on the white piece of paper. So I added these dots and you'll see that here in the shot. So we went from really the simple basic one layer card all the way through something that had dimension and multiple colors, kind of through cardstock or the backgrounds. So let me know what you think. Comment below. Do you like these cards? Do you have other ideas? Have you tried embossing on ink before? And if you're interested in receiving future videos from me, go ahead and hit subscribe and the alert button. That way you can get notified when videos come up. And I really appreciate you taking time with me today.